Hello, my friends. Welcome to Ren's room, my room. I hope you're doing good today. Today we have a bit of an Irish weather, which is unusual for here, but maybe you will be reminded of the kind of brightness that would have been typical of my earlier videos when I was based in Ireland. Today I want to talk a bit about this whole question of rethinking the INFJ being rethought. The implication also being that it's not just the INFJ that has to be rethought, there's all the types that have to be rethought, but this can only be attempted, one type at a time, and preferably by people who in the first place have a very deeply embedded understanding of what the particular type is. So people of that type preferably, or very closely related to that type. I want to emphasize that I will also be talking about why I think this reinvention and this rethinking, if you like, of the type is crucial for our future interactions with type, with communities of type, with theories of type, and so on. It's going to require just digging into some theory a little bit, so hopefully you'll be brave enough to stick around. I should mention that the things that I'm going to be talking about today are this topic, the principal topic of the first chapter of my upcoming book, which is getting ever closer to publication. It's going to be ready for publication soon. So if you got some savings, just keep them aside for it. Okay, you can still get the prequel to the book that will be coming out very soon, which is the Ecstatic Soul, if you haven't got it. Current's reference book on the INFJ. If you want a deep understanding of the type, the link is below, ebook or paperback. I've also written a novel called The Infinite Castle, which is a very nice product, and the rumor has it the main character is an INFJ. It's if you like Camus, Dostoevsky, existentialism, modernism, Kafka, this might be for you, and it supports the channel as does supporting me on Patreon. Very grateful for my supporters on Patreon. It helps keep the channel going. I don't monetize this channel. I mean, you're probably aware of this. Like, I've never made a cent off YouTube. I've never monetized my channel. The only little bit of money I make is through my book sales and Patreon, and I can always do with more. But thank you so much anyway for any support you can provide. Okay, so rethinking the INFJ. So I think there's a historical reason why the INFJ has to be rethought. And this historical reason is simply that, I don't know if you agree with me, if you can feel this, like we need to be a little bit Hegelian about it, after the Hegel, the philosopher who inspired Marx and who came in the wake of post-Kantian philosophy. You might be familiar with him through the concepts of dialectic, and maybe there are some among you who know Hegel very well, but either way, the idea being that whenever you try to understand a situation, theoretically, empirically, scientifically, whatever way you might want to look at the situation, sociologically, it's always crucial to keep in mind the historical perspective. That we're always in a historical process, and the historical process informs the way we look at particular problems. And if you like, I think that the question that we need to rethink the INFJ, the question that I want to ask, and that I ask in my upcoming book, is not a question that I would have asked in 2017. I say 2017 because that's when I started my channel. It could be 2018. Either way, it's one of those 2 years. That's like at least 6 years ago, possibly 7 years ago. So I've been making videos for 6 to 7 years. And at the time, I would not exactly have said that the INFJ needs to be rethought. It's also a product of current historical conditions, where I am sensing, and where some of you in your comments on YouTube, on my videos, but also some of you in personal communications on YouTube and on Patreon, have been picking up some trends, and it's also in the nature of perception dominant types that they do pick up on trends. Sometimes they don't have the confidence to trust what they see, but if they share what they see with others, these others might be able to kind of confirm that they've experienced the same things. And the trend that people have been picking up on, and I've been picking up on, is that there is a kind of growing aridity of interest in type. I just feel like the more time passes at the moment, the more the less the content is new. We're entering into a period where discussions about type tend to just endlessly repeat and recycle themselves. There's a lack of creativity. There's a lack of path-breaking approaches. There is a lack of dynamism, and I think that this is also reflected in the interest of people. It's harder now for people to decide that they want to make videos on the 16 types, or just on, thinking types, INTP, or INFJ types, or whatever. It's harder to stand out. It's harder to actually get an audience. Now, of course, one factor in this is that there's a lot more people wanting to make videos and who do make videos on this topic. Back in 2017, 2018, the competition was a lot less intense. There were just fewer of us, But I don't think, often that's invoked as the main reason. And what I want to emphasize here is that I don't think that's necessarily the main reason. It's one important reason, but it's not the only reason. An equally important reason, at least equally important reason, is what I'm talking about, this stultifying, this ossifying, this aridity of substantial conversations that are exciting, new and fresh about type. People just don't seem to be finding that. And as a result, there also seems to be, if you like, in that fierce competition, there seems to be a premium in terms of the focus that people are willing to sort of give to content producers in the type domain, in the type community. There seems to be, it's clearly noticeable that the focus seems to be put now on considerations that are actually, in fact, extra substance. Such as how snappy the format is, the particular personality of the content producer, maybe the looks of the content producer. That must always be a part of it somehow, but I feel like it's more important now. And maybe perks that it can give you that are not strictly related to your type, coaching advice, things like that. Or moment marketing, seizing a particular opportunity to, type as an excuse to discuss a particular event that people are going to be interested in, whether it's a purely online event or external. And of course, the formula of using the type lens to produce, like, say comedic videos, where Frank has been a pioneer and a very, very good pioneer at that. But nevertheless, in all this, if you like, there's just, for those of us who care about ensuring that there is always and at all times like an ongoing rich and self-enriching conversation that goes on about what type is, what type means, how type interacts with life, how type interacts with practice. I think there are some of us that are becoming those of us who are more interested in type for those reasons. They are a little bit frustrated. They find that there is more scarcity of content going in that direction than there used to be. That might not be quite the case if you join like some very specific online communities around type that are focused on a particular model, to type that is not the 16 personalities or even the Jungian cognitive functions. Either, have to do with what they aim to be like a more, a more scientific approach, for instance. There's also people who tend to find the Enneagram to be more flexible and to be more easily sort of translatable into new perspective and insights. But for those of us who still care about what INFJ means and about what INTP means and ENFP means, I think there's a real call, like a challenge now, to try to understand why it is that we're at a bit of a standstill. We are at a bit of a standstill, and that is something that we must honestly ask ourselves. And this is what has led me in many ways to writing my new book, which is to sort of begin with this open question, how can we rethink the INFJ? How can we use the rethinking of the INFJ to sort of try to spread that, to the interpretations of other types? What kind of conceptual frameworks, conceptual lenses can we use to achieve this? And the conclusion that I came to in that chapter, in those reflections, which hopefully you will read if you do get the book, is that of the opposition, which I've already been exploring in videos prior to this, and I'm sure you've seen some of those videos, between what I call the finite attitude to type and the infinite attitude to type. And I think that we are currently really locked into a very much finite attitude to type that is partly, to a large extent, what is causing us to experience this sense of limitation and ossification, and that we need to free up our conception towards something more infinite, not meaning that the entire world can be INFJ or anything like that, but there are infinitely different ways to be INFJ, and it also depends on particular time and epoch and geographical context. There'll be different expressions of that. Now, the infinite interpretation, or the infinite stance towards type, obviously goes much further than that, and it has as its root something that I would describe, and I have described in my book, as what I call, a questioning, a combating, a contending with the restrictive interpretations of type, including the restrictive interpretation of what it means to be an INFJ. And that, if I were to take the INFJ lens here for the sake of example, if you like, often the way that people approach type is not by looking at whether the particular descriptions that they encounter when they read about types, assuming the descriptions to be rich and to be insightful and thought-provoking, they don't relate to those descriptions as, if you like, vocabularies, metaphors, elements of speech, imaginative devices to color their own experience and give more meaning to it and more value to it, in a sense, and more clarity to the actions that compose your lives and the motivations. They don't relate to it as that. They tend to relate it as something that is already ready-made. It's like this big box that has which is why I call it a restrictive interpretation of type. It's a box that contains a certain number of objects in it, namely, like the objects would be the equivalent of the particular properties that a type is supposed to contain in it. And people look at those different boxes with their different objects that are inside the various drawers, if you like. And it's almost as if they just count the objects in every box, and they look at what objects they already possess. And the objects that they, the more objects you possess, the more likely you're going to say, okay, that's my box, right? So there's not much more than a process of identification with a particular box. And so that you give particular qualities to that box, often heightened qualities of, sometimes mythical proportions or at least fanciful proportions. And you say, okay, this is me, or this box is mine. And the arguments I will make, perhaps in the video tomorrow, because obviously I will have to continue the conversation tomorrow, or at least in another episode, is that that's not really going to lead you very far. First of all, you're going to get bored with this interpretation of type, because once you've added the label to yourself, maybe you felt good about it because you've heard that this box has been described in such excellent ways. After a while, you're gonna feel like you've exhausted everything that you can be interested in. So you'll never feel like you're learning anything more about your type, and that's because you're locked inside a restrictive interpretation. If it's restrictive, it's finite, has boundaries. So you can only fill it as much as you can. Once you kind of reach Like, you know, like once the box gets over full, you can't stuff anything more in it. And so, yeah, you can either look for other boxes, try to convince yourself you're somehow another type, or you can try to ask yourself, how can I conceive of my type not as a box, but as something that doesn't have boundaries? It sounds like it could be a paradox, because then if there's no boundaries, how can there be types? Let's discuss that tomorrow and see if we can find a solution. So I wanted to set the context for this idea of rethinking the INFJ. Let me know in the comments if you understand my purpose, and are you gonna get the new book? I'm just it's the first time I ask, but you know, are you interested in getting it? Yeah, like what do you think it will be about? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you soon, guys. Take care.